Back again with my February manga haul. A lot bigger than I was expecting, especially since I wasn't planning on getting too much after Christmas, but as you can see, that changed quite a bit. I got a number of these from convention and a book sale. So I guess I got about 45 or so volumes here. So a ton of volumes for you guys to see. I guess I'll start with some of the convention ones I got here first. Not amazing deals, but these were ones I was definitely looking to finish up in my collection. And these are out of print, so I figure if I can find almost all of them, if not all of them that I was looking for, I'd pick them up for a relatively decent deal. So right here I have Pet Shop of Horrors 3, 4, 5, 7 through 10. I actually already had 1, 2, and 6, kind of random volumes, so I was able to pick up the rest of these here. So this is a kind of a psychological horror with some it's kind of like a fable in that sort of sense. There's always sort of ethical lessons in them. The art is pretty kind of old style, I think more 90s, if I remember correctly. Which I actually quite enjoy this series a lot for some of the sort of one-shot stories. Each of these you have your main character here, of course, and you have various animals that people pick up, and basically a disaster happens in most of the volumes that I know of. I have not gotten to read a number of these. I mostly got into this series from when I heard about it, before I read a little bit about it, or read some of it, and then I watched the OVA, 4 OVA episodes that aired, which I would say are pretty good. Maybe check those out if you don't want to read some of the manga first. It definitely gets sort of that same kind of feel. I don't know if they have the sort of the best individual story arcs, or if they go in order or not, as I need to pick up the rest of, or read the rest of these. There's also Pet Shop of Horrors Tokyo, I think, which is sort of a sequel to this. I don't know how many volumes there are in that, but if I like this enough, maybe I'll pick up the rest of these. But this is Pet Shop of Horrors here, and there's 10 volumes in this first series here. Sadly, as I said, they're out of print, so they're a bit expensive to come by. So really glad to have the rest of these finally. Next, I have Red River. I'm trying to figure out which way to put these. 23 to 28, which I know kind of random volumes, but when I picked these up at the convention, they had a bunch of volumes missing, and I didn't want to just get a whole bunch of random volumes, especially because these are very expensive out of print, and I figured I'd be able to pick up some of the earlier volumes together easier than the last few volumes. These are all on shrink wrap, of course, so they're basically brand new, which is amazing. 23. Basically a really great, sort of more mature, as you see, series. If you like sort of historical sort of drama in there as well, it has some of that in it. Really strong main female character as well, which is nice. Can't say she's not sometimes the damsel in distress, of course, but just a really enjoyable series. I really wish they would have a reprint of this, but highly doubt it anytime soon. Quite nice red covers, so they'll stand out in a collection. The art's pretty okay. I wouldn't say the best, but the story's definitely interesting. I think it goes on for a bit too many volumes. I think, yeah, there's 28 volumes here. This is the last volume. So the beginning and the end kind of picks up more, but a lot of the same stuff happens in the middle, if I remember correctly. I'm doing sort of a reread right now, but really good, more adult shoujo series. It might be a josei. I'm not really entirely sure, but really nice. Might eventually pick up some more of these if I can find them for a decent deal and in a relatively good condition. As you see, these are wrapped, so these are in perfect condition, so that's why I want to pick up those, but we'll see what I can find. I know there's some really rare volumes that go for maybe 20 to like sometimes 50 maybe, I don't know, but definitely over retail price. And I got these for a little under retail, so definitely happy about those. Next, we have all of these right here, which I got for an amazing deal at this book sale somewhat recently. I think I got most of these for around $2 or $3 or so. So really excited about all these pickups. That's also why there's so many. Normally I wouldn't pick up so many at the same time. But yeah. So first off, we have volume 7 and 8 of xxXHolic, or sorry, 6 and 7 of xxXHolic. I know they have omnibus editions that are out that are still in print, but I just really like these individual covers. As you can see, here's Yuko here, but really they just have beautiful single volume covers, and I don't really like the look of the omnibuses as much. I figure I'd eventually slowly pick up these over time, as I don't think they're quite as bad to find than some of the other series. I do have 1 through 5 already, and I believe there's around 14 maybe volumes of this, so I definitely have, or there's probably actually more like 20, but I know there's a whole bunch of volumes of these. A little bit harder to pick up as well if you're just, you know, getting into some of the manga for your first time, or if you haven't heard of the other series. There's also Tsubasa and I think Cardcaptor Sakura that has some sort of influence on these, because they're kind of in the same universe and they have some crossover, so you kind of have to pick up more at the same time. But still a great sort of supernatural story. Definitely my genre, of course. Then I have Vampire Doll Volume 6. My friend actually gave me this volume because she got it from some random blind bag or whatnot, and she's like, oh, I don't really want this one, so here I have this one, which is the last in the series. I also have 1 and 2 and didn't enjoy it that much. I mostly picked it up because of that kind of gothic aesthetic, which it definitely carries through. Wouldn't necessarily recommend picking up this one unless, you know, it's like, I guess you're sort of liking for maybe sort of the art style, and you get it for cheap. It is out of print because Tokyo Pop, so, but you seem to find these quite around for cheap, so I guess if that's your thing. Next I have Yosupe Volume 1. Very excited about this one. It's more of a lighthearted comedy series that I've heard great things from friends about this series, so I always wanted to pick up a volume of this. Hopefully I'll see from this one if I enjoy this series, although it's got amazing reviews from people, so excited to read some comedy, especially between some of these other more horror aspected series, you know, need some lighter stories in there, in between there. Next I have Blood Plus Adagio. I don't know. It's a musical term, I believe. There's an explanation on at the end of the first volume, I believe. But this is basically a side, maybe like kind of like a prequel side story. It takes place before the actual main story takes place. And what's interesting, so this is the complete of this. As you can see, the second volume's a lot smaller than the first one, so clearly they didn't size out these. No, I don't want to say properly, but definitely not as much content for your money's worth, I suppose. But I really enjoyed the anime. It was one of the first ones that I got into, so I also have the manga as well, but I don't like what they did with some of the character designs of some of the other main-ish characters besides from our main character, so can't say it's as good, so I would recommend maybe watching some of the anime first, because you get more character development than these, than the manga, but it's definitely nice, sort of additional content if that's your thing. So, yep, that's it for those. Oh yeah, so these two are actually, I got new, so these weren't actually $2 or $3. I wish though. And these were, I think, like $5, I don't know. But anyway, they're all less than retail. The Promised Neverland, Volume 2. As I already stated, this series is amazing. Definitely one of the best new Shonen Jump series. The art style is quite nice, I would say. There's a lot of smaller details in the background, which is quite nice, especially later on, which you'll see with that as well. And there's a lot of foreshadowing happening in there. I love these kind of fisheye covers in here, and sometimes you have some color pages in the front. I don't know if this one, I think anyway, but really great series. Again, psychological thriller with some younger main characters. So if you like that sort of kind of apocalypse mystery, not really sure what's going on, or I guess you're getting it from their character perspective, so there's a lot about the world that you'll get to find out. Great series, definitely recommend. Takane and Hana, I actually heard about this one coming out a little bit before I picked it up, and I did a little bit of reading online, and I actually kind of enjoyed it for what it was. You definitely have a more sassy, strong-willed main character. Again, they really contrast each other, as you can kind of see even with their hairstyles as well. It's definitely big of an age gap, so I guess if you don't like that sort of thing, you might not like that as much, because obviously that's kind of an element in here as well, but I think they take it in stride. I think there's a lot of really funny comedy in here, lots of text and sort of inner dialogue, which I quite like as well, so I can't say I've definitely had a smile on my face most of the time reading this one, so I might end up picking up some more of these, but would recommend if you like sort of that more comedy, romance aspect of it, again with this guy being really rich and this girl being kind of poor, high schooler I believe, so yeah. This one just came out, so it might be a while for the next volume. And then next, I have Higurashi, When They Cry, volumes 1 and 2. And I don't really have too much to say about this one. I don't particularly like some of those super gory series as much, I guess. I don't know, it just hits that extra mile compared to some of the other gory horror series. But I remember watching some of the anime and I couldn't watch too much of it. I don't know, something got to me there. But I think I'll be have an easier time getting through some of these sort of psychological scenarios with some of the gore better in the manga, since it's in black and white and you can kind of read through it at your own pace. Let me just say though, the anime definitely adds, the music is definitely a key element in there, so you might like watching the anime before reading some of the manga. I do need to read some of this, but this is the first 2 volumes, and if you're picking up this series, just be careful to make sure, look what arc you get. A lot of them say 1 and 2, or 3 different, they'll repeat depending on the arcs, so like if you had another name of the arc, I'm trying to think, Cotton Drifting arc is another name, and then it'll start with 1 and 2, so they're by arcs. I think the top here is what you should look at with what order to get, but just beware if you are picking this up, depending on what volumes you get. Alright, next I have Blame Volume 1 of the Tokyo Pop edition. Now, I really just heard this was a great art, atmospheric one. The main character doesn't speak very much. If you kind of see through here, there's a lot of just bigger action scenery pictures. Now, as such, I was really interested in this one because a lot of people talk about it. And currently, the Tokyo Pop volumes are out of print, so you might have a hard time finding these ones. Recently, they've come out with master editions of Blame, which are like very large, oversized editions, which are around like $35 retail, I think, which are a great pickup if you're super into this series. I don't really know too much about this personally, so I just was able to pick up this first volume for really cheap. So hopefully I'll get kind of a feel of the series and at least get to appreciate some of the art style. If you look at some of the other comparisons to the volume size, it's a lot bigger, at least this first volume for Tokyo Pop. and pretty excited about this one. I hope it's quite as exciting as some people say. Definitely, you know, mostly just here to absorb the art here. And hopefully, well, I guess if I like it enough, I'll probably pick up the Master Editions, but if you're a fan, probably pick up the Master Editions, and they'll probably be cheaper in the long run. Next we have Tokyo Ghoul, volumes 1 through 5. Now, let me just say, these already caught my eye before with these gorgeous covers. Like, they're slightly, I believe, an oversized edition, so they're bigger than a normal volume size here. And I read some of this one online, and it's definitely an interesting psychological series. The art's, of course, gorgeous. I was just hesitant to pick up these volumes because they're like $13 retail, and even used, since the series is very popular and well received, that they're still very expensive used. So when I've got these for really cheap, relatively, I'm super excited to actually read this series physically. I never finished reading it online from what I could find, but I really have been enjoying some of this series. Again, with the gorgeous covers. And I think, basically, Viz Media just did a great job with this release. I believe there's 14 or so volumes in the main series here, and they have Tokyo Ghoul Re, which has been still releasing, and there's an, I think it's still ongoing, but ending soon. So, hopefully I'll still enjoy this later on. I don't remember exactly how far I got into this series, but quite nice if you can't handle gore and that sort of more psychological, like, I wouldn't say just psychological, more like maybe physical horror. You probably won't like this one. They're ghouls, as hence that, so you have a lot of that aspect. But very nice. Love this release, so it'll look great on the shelf. Next we have, I pretty much just had a bunch of horror pickups now that I think about it, but it's what I could find that I was interested in. We have Monster, which these are the single volumes released, the Viz signature ones here, and these are also out of print, so it's kind of nice to pick up these. I have volumes 1 through 4 here, and another psychological sort of thriller series, which I need to watch the anime, which I've only seen like the first episode or two, but really atmospheric. I've heard both the manga and anime is amazing. I think the anime goes around 50 episodes, and I don't know how long this is, but sadly, since the single volumes are out of print, I might probably not end up picking up the rest of these. But there's an amazing omnibus edition, which I would almost say would be better than the singles because of the covers go a lot nicer together, and I can't say there's really any standout art because you just have the title on here, I guess in different colors. So pick it up whatever way is cheaper for you. I mean, you kind of have the cool blood splatter, but still, I don't think it's probably worth the price you'll be paying since these are out of print. There's 3. Sorry, I'm showing these out of order. Someone like, I think saran wrap. Oh, they like saran wrap this one. I don't really know why, but again, psychological horror. Been meaning to read some of these classics, sort of older classics, and it was nice to see a lot of these here. Again, newer volumes and older volumes. Next I have Takami Bachi, which is sort of this more offbeat, I would say, I think, shonen series. It's more about sort of projecting your feelings and telling a story. The art's pretty nice. It's kind of in this more dystopian setting. It's Takami Bachi letter B, so there's definitely kind of like that exploration aspect of it. I've only read a little bit of this one as well before, and I also just think these covers are also really gorgeous. I love that sort of starry sky look to it, and it was quite nice first volume, I would say. I don't know if it's going to be like one of my favorite mangas ever, but it's a pretty nice pickup. I'll read through this one again and maybe read some more before if I consider to pick up the rest of this, but you got like a little shine here, but pretty nice overall. Next I have Helsing Volume 1, which I actually already had this volume before. I just picked up another one here because I was thinking about maybe doing some sort of picture collage or messing with that as well, and since this was pretty cheap, and it has some nice dark white contrast, it might be fun to do something with. As I probably mentioned before, I'm a pretty big fan of the anime, at least the Helsing Ultimate, so I would definitely recommend that first. The artwork does go up, does improve over time of the series. Some of the proportions in here are a little wonky, but if you like sort of a super dark action gore series with vampires in it, you'll enjoy this one. Definitely don't take this one too seriously. It's more of sort of just like a fun guilty pleasure series. These are also, I don't know if the first volume is still still in print, but it's pretty easy to come by. The other volumes, however, are quite expensive, so if you're planning on picking up the rest of the, or if you're planning on to pick this series up, it'll cost you quite a bit, particularly volumes 9 and 10, so keep an eye on that if you're looking for them. Next we have Pori by Matsuri Hino. I remember reading this one before. It's only a 4-volume series, so it's sort of a shorter series. I'm a little sad that they didn't have the 4th volume already as well, so I'll have to maybe find the last volume here, but basically a pretty typical shoujo series with like different worlds. Kind of a weird dimension to it with this sort of arguably younger kid, but not younger. It's kind of weird. But for as long as they did a pretty decent job with it. The art style is a typical sort of shoujo series, but no major complaints there. It was an enjoyable series, and it's kind of nice that it's a shorter 4-volume series, so it's pretty easy to pick up if you have interest in it. But pretty nice. Next we have Angel Sanctuary Volume 1, and I actually don't know very much about this series. I think I heard that it was a little bit complex with the amount of characters and such, but it's definitely an older series by, or just an older series in general. I don't know if this was one of the, I'm trying to think, one of the older, I don't know. If I remember later and say it, you'll know. But again, another shoujo series, sort of dealing with higher beings, I think. It's one of the classics as well that I heard about, older. So I figured I'd pick up this single volume that they had there. And we'll see, I don't know too much about it. Next I have Berserk Volume 1, which I know they're very expensive retail. I think they're around $15. So when I got this for like a fifth of that price, I was like, oh, I have to get this volume. Again, I guess, I don't know, something about these psychological ones attracts me. It's not quite as much, it's more sort of high fantasy, very gory, very graphic, so would not recommend to the faint of hearted at all, but it's also very popular, and I was able to pick up this volume, so I at least will have something to show of this collection. I don't think I'll probably end up picking the rest up. I know Dark Horse has been known, or this series has been known to be in and out of print all the time. So I'm sure by the time I end up getting any more of these, the spines will be different, but the art is amazing and very detailed. But So if you're looking for that in a series, would definitely recommend. And I heard the story itself is quite amazing, but something about some of all this excessive gore and stuff probably won't attract, or probably won't be a series that I super love. But it's realistic and gritty, so definitely advise if you like that. Next I have Liselette and the Witch's Forest. This is, again, sort of an oversized volume as well, bigger than a normal volume. And this was a recent release by Yen Press, and it's more of a simple art style. It kind of reminds me of Fruits Basket, if you've read any of that. I don't think it's the same author. Nah, but I believe it's like 13 or 15 retail. Of course, Yen Press's releases are a bit more expensive, but I do enjoy their oversized series. Again, the art style is probably nothing to write home about. I don't know too much about the story itself. I believe there's 4 or 5 volumes that have been released, but the authors had health problems, so it's on hiatus for who knows how long. So I don't know if I necessarily recommend picking up this series considering its price, unless you can find it for pretty cheap, and especially because I don't think the story will be finished anytime soon. So I'll let you know after I do read all of this volume, but nothing to write home about from first impressions, or appearances, I suppose. And then finally, which I was very surprised to see, is I have Adolf, or another name that people know of it, Message to Adolf. This is one of the original releases of this series in English. It is the singles edition, so these are hardcovers, and basically, I don't know if it's a retelling of history, but again, it's a classic that I've heard of, Osamu Tezuka, and I just heard amazing things about this, and again, for the price I got it for a hardcover, it was too good to pass up. I will say the quality is pretty nice here. Again, it's an older manga. I think it was released in the 80s or so, but it's definitely quite popular, and there's 5 of these singles out. These covers are basically memes or jokes, I would say, because, like, they're like kind of bad photoshopped ones. Like with this, I have 1, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. One downside is it doesn't actually say what volume it is. It just has the name. Just has a name on the side here. So very nice though, quality wise. Sort of nice thicker paper, but there's also an omnibus release that was more recent, but that has a much more attractive sort of simplistic cover. But again, those are now out of print, and I think they will run you about $40-50 per, whereas at least you can find these used for cheaper, if that's your thing, if you're just looking to collect the series. But I don't know too much about that aside from that. Looks like definitely more political, psychological, lots of dialogue. Don't have too much, again, to say about this series. Pretty excited to actually read into these and see how they actually are. Again, one of the more older classics. So, kind of to recap here, if I can get these all sort of lined up. I apologize if the volumes are upside down. I know that bothers some people, but they'll be put right on my bookshelf when I get them there. We got Message to Adolf, The Monster 1 through 4, Pori, Berserk, Takami Bachi, the first 5 volumes of Tokyo Ghoul, Liselette and the Witch's Forest 1, Angel Sanctuary 1, Helsing 1, the first 2 volumes of, first volume of Blame, first 2 volumes of Higurashi, Takane and Hana Volume 1, Promised Neverland Volume 1, The Blood Plus Adagio, see xxXHolic Vampire Doll, my bunch of rest of Pet Shop of Horrors, and Red River 23 to 28. So all in all, a ton of volumes. I've probably, it looks like I've started more volumes than I've finished. I've only finished up now Pet Shop of Horrors, so a lot more left to collect if I enjoy it. A lot of horror, psychological horror, as you see here. And I'll try to give out some sort of first impressions reviews of this series, although if you guys are know too much about any of these manga, or just know about manga in general, been reading for a while, I'm sure you've heard a number of these classics as well. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy. This is my February manga haul, which was crazy. This will probably be the biggest ever, but still for a pretty good price on all these, so no complaints there. Probably won't be getting anything, or only a select few volumes in the upcoming months, as I'm going to wait for some stuff to release. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. See you next time.